Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, The Creation, Chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka, Text 22. For those online, we'll be doing it old style, one line at a time with repeating. Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Swajiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim. Anama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Nijavirya choditam. Swajiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim. Anama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Everyone can chant. Eva bhuyo jiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim. Nama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Sajiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim. Anama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Anama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam. Sajiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim. Anama rupatmani rupanamani. Vidit samano nusasara shastra krit. Should I do the online people out there in television land?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please go ahead. Vindavali Mataji.
Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya choditam.
Sa eva bhuyo nijavirya
choditam. Sajiva mayam prakritim susrikshitam.
Swajiva mayam prakritim susrikshatim.
Anama rupatmani rupanamani.
Anama rupatmani rupanamani.
Vidit samano anusara shastra krit.
Vivid samano sasara sastra
Hare Krishna.
Saeva bhuyo nijavirya choditam
Saeva bhuyo nijavirya choditam
Swajiva maya prakritim sasrikshitam
Swajiva mayam prakritim sisrukshitam
Anamarupatmani rupanamani
Anamarupadmani rupanamani
Vidit samano nusasara sastrakrit
Vidit samano anusara sastrakrit.
Hare Krishna. Sa eva bhuyo nijavir-joditam
Aeva bhuyo
Nijavirya choditam
sajiva mayam prakritim sisushatim
Sajiva
Sajiva
maya
mayam
prakritim
prakritim
sasrikshitam
sisrukshitam
anamarupatmani
Anamarupadmani
vidheta samano nusasara shastra-krita
Vidit samano anusara shastrakrit.
Okay, word for word translation. Oops. Sa, he, eva, thus, bhuya, again, nija, own personal, virya, potency, choditam, performance of, swa, own, jiva, living being, mayam, external energy, prakritim, unto material nature, sistrikshatim, while recreating, anama, without mundane designation, rupa atmani, forms of the soul, rupa namani, forms and names,
Forms and names.
vidit samana,
Vidit samana,
desiring to award,
desiring to award.
anusasara,
Anusasara,
entrusted, shastrakrit, the compiler of revealed scripture. Translation: the personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are of two varieties, namely Nitya Mukta and Nitya Baddha. The Nitya Muktas are eternally liberated souls, and they are eternally engaged in the reciprocation of transcendental loving service with the Lord in his eternal abode beyond the manifested mundane creations. But the Nitya Baddha, or eternally conditioned souls, are entrusted to his external energy, Maya, for rectification of their rebellious attitude toward the Supreme Father. Nitya Baddhas are eternally forgetful of their relation with the Lord as parts and parcels. They are bewildered by the illusory energy as products of matter, and thus they are very busy making plans in the material world for becoming happy. They go on merrily with plans by the will of the Lord, the plan maker of the millennium. All the living entities merge into my nature. And again, when the time of creation is ripe, I begin creating by the agency of my external energy. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 7. The word
Bhuya indicates again.
Bhuya indicates again and again. That is to say, the process of energy of the Lord. He is the cause of everything. But the living beings who are constitutionally the
Audio is cutting. Audio is not clear.
of the Lord and are forgetful of the sweet relation are given a chance again to get the living being's consciousness. The revealed scriptures create the Lord. Vedic literature, so they can get free from the annihilation of the material world and the material body. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, this created world and material energy are under my control, under the influence of Prakriti. Automatically, they are created again and again. And this is done by me through the agency of my
External
energy.
Audio is not clear.
Actually, the spiritual spark living entities have no material names or forms, but in order at the same time, they're given a chance to understand the real position through the revealed scriptures. The foolish and forgetful living being is always busy with false forms and false names. Modern nationalism is the culmination of such false names and false forms. Men are mad after false name and form. The form of body obtained under certain conditions is taken up as factual, and the name also taken bewilder many isms. The scriptures, however, supply the clue for understanding the real position, but men are reluctant to take lessons from the scriptures created by the Lord for different places and times. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is the guiding principle for all human beings. But Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study of knowledge for one who has thoroughly understood the print book. Fortunately, people have no taste for them and therefore under the contradiction of birth and death. Swajivamayam prakim anama rupatmani rupanamani anonusasara shastrakrit. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschadadi Shatarini. Hare Krishna. So another interesting purport after the
Hare Krishna,
ecstasy of
one
the
request,
residents
please.
of Hastinapur last week. Now some deep philosophy
They are not able to hear
complement it.
anything.
And
Hare Krishna,
Prabhupada, two
Prabhu.
very interesting points in the purport. First, Prabhupada's
No, they
discussion
can't
of
hear.
Nitya Muktas and Nitya Badhas. From the purport, he says,
Ramshan,
the
Prabhu, you are
Nitya
muted.
Muktas are eternally liberated souls, and they are eternally
Audio
engaged
is
in
not
the
clear, Prabhu.
reciprocation of the abode beyond the manifested mundane creations.
Audio is not clear.
And we think of these Nitya Muktas, and we may think of like Radha, the gopis, Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd boyfriends, persons like that, eternal associates of the Lord. We may think of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, the 6 Goswamis who were all eternal associates of the Lord. They're always with Krishna, they're always loving and serving Krishna, generally in the spiritual world, but even if they come to this material world, they're eternally liberated, Nitya Mukta. They'll never leave, they'll never give up Krishna's lotus feet. And then there are the Nitya Badhas, again from the purport, Nityabadas are eternally forgetful of their relationship with the Lord as parts and parcels. Prabhupada discusses this a lot. I'll give a few references. This is from the first canto, 3rd chapter, in the purport of text 1. He says, this creation and destruction is done by the supreme will because of the conditioned souls, or the Nityabada living beings. The Nityabada, or the eternally conditioned souls, have the sense of individuality, or ahankara, which dictates them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. The Lord is the only enjoyer, and all others are enjoyed. So these are Nityabadas. Eternally bound, eternally conditioned, eternally forgetful of Krishna. What the Nitya Muktas have eternally, the love and service of Krishna, the Nityabadas don't have. But Prabhupada makes some important analysis and distinction about this, especially for understanding the Nityabadas. Nityabada is not like in the Christian conception of eternal damnation, that you go to hell or you go to this material world and you're there literally eternally and you can never escape and you can never get out. This is not exactly the position of the Nityabadas, although this word Nitya is used. In the spiritual world, Prabhupada says that there's no influence of time in the spiritual world. And Bhagavatam says, Nacha Kala Vikrama, Nacha Kala Vikrama in the 2nd canto, that there's no influence of time in the spiritual world. So if there's a Nityabada in this world and he becomes perfect and goes back to the spiritual world, this distinction of Nitya Mukta and Nityabada, this is a distinction that we're making on this side of, whatever wall or Viraja River or whatever distinction between the spiritual world and the material world. This is distinction we're making here. In the spiritual world, no one's asking, no one's looking, oh, this is an eternally liberated, this is a Nitya Mukta, he just came, he dropped in last week from the material world or something like that. That idea is not present at all. And first of all, because they don't care, because the only condition is if you're loving and serving Krishna, that's the only concern. And secondly, conditioned life is something that happens within the influence and the flow of time in the material world, but time is not present, not Kala Vikrama, there's no influence of time in the spiritual world. So what is the whole concept in the spiritual world of something happening in the flow of material time is meaningless. It has no applicability in the spiritual world. So we can remember that when we're thinking about what a Nityabada is. Prabhupada discusses it, like I said, often what it means, but we may think, oh, Nitya means eternal. So Prabhupada explains in one class way back in 1967, he explains that the Nitya Muktas are like fish swimming in the huge unlimited ocean. And the Nityabadas are fish stuck in a little puddle or a little pond or a little very limited stream. And he says, then he raised the question, but why stay limited? He says, why should you remain conditioned under the laws of material nature? Let us try to go back to the ocean and become big. That should be the philosophy of life. Introducing this idea that Nityabada is not absolutely Nitya in the sense that we may think of it. In another lecture, he says, Nityabada, this word is technical. So there's technical language, like in any science or any craft, there's technical language where words have particular and specific meanings, even different from their ordinary usage. So he says, this word is technical. Nityabada means ever conditioned. There are Nitya Muktas. Nitya Mukta means ever liberated in the spiritual world. There are also innumerable living entities. Those who are conditioned, they're called Nityabada, ever conditioned. Nityabada means we do not know when this conditional stage has begun. It is impossible to trace out the history, but we are conditioned. There is no doubt about it. Conditioned means no freedom. And again, he says, these souls that have fallen into this material world in order to gratify their senses are called Nityabada, eternally conditioned. I was conditioned, and my presumed existence in previous yugas and previous creations, millions of years, billions of years, I was conditioned. And when and how that conditioning started cannot be traced out. So in that sense, it's eternal that we can't, within the confines of time. Therefore, we say eternal. And as far as in the future goes, it's eternal in the sense that it could go on another life or another creation or another round of yugas or another few lifetimes of Lord Brahma. It could also go in the future, uncharted. It's as eternal as we allow it to be, or as eternal as we want, and not like eternal Christians, because Prabhupada again offers the option at the Nityabadas, we can give up the confines of the little river and enter into the big ocean, at which point the distinction is lost. So what is the fate of these Nityabadas, or what do they do? What is it that makes them Nityabadas? He explains this as twofold. Like he says in today's purport, there are the plans and the plan makers, and all of them will be annihilated. So the first symptom, or the first condition of those who are eternally conditioned, is that they are going to be smashed. They are going to be destroyed. We are going to be smashed and destroyed. And all the big, big plans or little plans we make are going to be smashed and going to be destroyed. All the plans and all the plan makers, we want to build up our wealth, and we work so hard for it. We want to build up our wealth, our prestige, our sense gratification. These different things, we're making plans that this is me and this is what I want and this is what will make some advancement in those fields. It's going to be smashed eventually. And what's the second quality of the Nityabadas that Prabhupada brings down in this purport is that it goes on again and again and again and again. You're smashed and you're born and again. Booyah. Booyah, they say, right? It's not an expression people like, an expression of an expletive, booyah. So again and again, you struggle and you're defeated, and again, and you're born and you live and you, what is it? Born, develop, maintain, give off byproducts, dwindle and die, and then again and again and again and again. It's like everyone knows the myth of Sisyphus from Greek mythology. Sisyphus was cursed by Zeus because of his pride, and he wanted to defeat death. It's a whole story. And he was cursed to go to hell. And in hell, there was a big mountain, and he had to take a huge boulder and struggle and push that boulder to the top and struggle, push it to the top. And then as soon as he reached the top, the boulder would roll back down to the bottom, and he had to go down and start again, up, and then rolls down. So this is the myth of Sisyphus, and this is an excellent analogy, I think, for the Nityabadas, because it's going on again and again and again with no conclusion. As long as you stay within that Nityabada lifestyle and Nityabada category, again and again defeated. And that's why Prabhupada, he mentions in today's verse, Bhagavad Gita 9:7. There's a whole series of verses there discussing this 9:7, which Prabhupada quotes in the purport. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So it's going on and again and again. And the next verse says the same thing, text 8. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. Here, instead of bhuya, Krishna is using the word puna, 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 again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. And then Prabhupada also, without giving the verse number, he also quotes 9:10. Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sataracharam. The material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So again and again and again, over and over. And again being defeated and losing not gaining what you want. And whatever you do gain, you're losing it. So this is the position of the Nityabadas in this world. Even more perfectly described, so nicely described by Prahlad Maharaj. Matirna Krishne Paratak Svatova, Mito Bipadyet Griha Vratanam, Adanta Gobir Vishitam Tamisham, Puna Punak Charvita Charvananam. Perfect description of the Nityabadas in both of the senses that Prabhupada is using the word. Matirna Krishna, they're forgetting Krishna, they're giving up Krishna, and they can't be corrected either by their own endeavor or by the help of others or by some combination. And they're simply absorbed in sense gratification. Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram, chasing after sense gratification, which simply casts them down into darkness. So that's the failure of this Nityabada life. And then Punak Charvita Charvananam, repeatedly chewing that which has already been chewed. This is the sense of repetition, that over and over you try and you fail and you do it again and you fail and you fail. So this is the entanglement of material life practically, where, in practical life of the materialistic person, what they're going through. And behind that practical, horrible life of disappointment and of repeated disappointment, there's a mentality, there's a consciousness that generates that kind of life. And that's the other point that Prabhupada is bringing up in the purport today. Very interesting idea about this world of names and forms. This is from the last paragraph of the purport. Let's see. Actually, the spiritual spark living entities have no material names or forms, but in order to fulfill their desire to lord it over the material energy of material forms and names, they are given a chance for such false enjoyment, and at the same time, they are given a chance to understand the real position through the revealed scriptures. So this is very interesting, that this is the world of names and forms. This is also described in the later in the second canto, that this world is described as the world of names. In today's verse, the word I think is namasu, and in that verse, the word namabi is used from the second canto. Ata kavir namasu yavadarta. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names. And in the purport again, Prabhupada says, the whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter, like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. So I think this is a very interesting concept. This is the world of names. When a child is born, he has no language, he has no understanding. Then he grows and he starts understanding. He gives names, mama, papa, mata, pita, and starts naming things. This is this, and this is that. And in this way, he understands the world, is able to interact the world, and tries to start exploiting the world. Or in the Bible, at the beginning of creation, in the creation myth of the Bible, when God created Adam and Eve, and Adam's first business was to give names to everything. This is a dog, this is a cat, this is a lion, this is a this. So this concept of giving things a name in order to not create, but in order to make the world comprehensible and manipulable, able to manipulate the matter of this world, we give it a name, and we give ourselves a name. I'm Acharya, or I'm Adam, and I give my wife a name. This is my wife, and we have this certain relation, and I give this a name. This is my job. This is my nation. This is my country. This is my political party. This is my this or that. So all of this is creating names, and the Nitya Bhada creates these names for the sake of making the world into his playground, his plaything, something that he can use, something that he can manipulate for his own purpose. But all those names are going to be gone. Temporary names and temporary forms. Now I'm thinking Acharya, but in a few years, this body will have a different form. It'll have a different name. Bhagavatam says those names can be Vid, Krimi, Bhashma. This is what happens to the material body, and it gets a whole new name. Someone may be beautiful, ugly, human, dog, whatever, but eventually all those names are gone, and the name is now Vid, Krimi, Bhashma, which means stool, worms, and ashes. And Prabhupada explains ashes when the body's dead in the most of the Eastern religions, Hinduism, the Vedic culture. Also, I think, actually, I'm not sure. I think some of the Taoism and some of those also burn the body at the time of death. And thus the end of the body is ashes. Now it has a new name, ashes. And in the Abrahamic religions, they like to bury the body. So you bury the body and the worms come in and the germs come in and digest it and eat it and pass it out as stool. So now the name of the body is stool. Adam is gone, Acharya is gone, just stool. And the Parsis have their very interesting method. They have what are called towers of silence, where they take the body of the deceased, they put it at the top of a big tower, and they just leave the body there, and the vultures come and digest it. So actually the Abrahamic religions, the body becomes worms and germs. And in the Parsi religion, the vultures come and eat it, digest it, and pass it out as stool. So all of this, of course, is based on the false notion of who we are, because we give the false names and the false forms. Therefore, we misunderstand everything about what's going on. This is from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary on that second canto verse. He says, this is the path of the Vedas made up of sound, in which the intelligence of the sadhaka becomes engaged in names, such as swarga. He thinks, I will attain happiness in swarga, but it is useless. This is described. With a desire for happiness, the person in a dream wandering around does not enjoy objects. Though he attains those planets like swarga or objects of sense gratification, he does not get excellent happiness since it is perishable. So we give these names. The Vedic practitioner gives the name heaven. This is my goal. And it's just like a person in a dream. And the materialist gives a name of sense gratification, whether it's money or power or sex or whatever it may be. And that's also the same emptiness and the same deceit, same defeat. In fact, one of the words for death in Sanskrit is namashesha. Namashesha means death. But the literal meaning, or the etymology, is nam ashesha. Nama means name, and shesha means what's left at the end, the remnant or the last thing or the last bit left over. Like when you, like in math, when you divide and there's a remainder. So this is shesha. So nama shesha means the person's gone and everything's gone, the body's gone, and all that's left is the name. We remember the names of people, mundane people in history. George Washington, Mohandas Gandhi, just nama shesha, only the name remains. Everything else is gone, everything else defeated, everything else recycled, going on again and again and again. So this is the position of the Nityabhadas. Because they have this false mentality of names and forms, that this, I name this falsely what I think I am, and falsely what I think all the people around us and all the material objects around me, I give names, falsely thinking what they're supposed to be. And because of that, I'm always defeated in my search for happiness. And not just defeated, and that's over. You lose the game and go home, but no, again and again and again defeated. And this is where it's important to understand the options of the Nityabhada, which is we, or at least myself as a Nityabhada, struggling to not be a Nityabhada anymore. By taking up devotional service, it's possible to break that so-called eternal Nityabhada. And how do we do that? In one sense, you could say we rename everything. Not literally, we don't have to literally rename everything, but the sense of it is that we give it a new name and a new form. At the time of initiation, I'm not Adam anymore, I'm Acharya Das. Because having that name, it creates a whole conception and a whole life and a whole practice built around just that changing of name. And when we change the name, that this is not just earth, water, fire, air, ether, this is not just a material body, but we rename it that this is Krishna's energy. And therefore, as Krishna's energy, it has a different purpose, it has a different use, and it creates in our mind a different understanding of how we relate to all of these things. So this is the renaming that's going on, that we rename ourselves, that we're Jiver Shrupai Krishna Nityadas, that I'm such and such Das or such and such Dasi. I'm Krishna's part and parcel. And this is true for the devotees, and it's also true for the potential devotees, that when we meet a person, that person is a Nityabhada, has no conception, but you could introduce them to this renaming, that you're not a material body, you're a spirit soul. Your business is not sense gratification, your business is serving Krishna. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. It's renaming everything, re-understanding everything, renewing our relationship with everything, so that we're understanding the names and forms in the world around us in the sense of the Nitya Mukta, not in the sense of the Nityabhada. And that's how the pure devotee sees Krishna everywhere, because he re-understands the world in that sense. One time Srila Prabhupada was on a morning walk and one devotee was asking him, Prabhupada, how do we understand that a pure devotee sees Krishna everywhere? Is it that if I look at this wall, I'll see, Krishna standing on top of the wall or in front of the wall? Or will I see Krishna in every brick? Or will I see him in every atom in the brick and mortar? So he was trying by his, intelligence to understand how to see Krishna everywhere. And Prabhupada said, it's just like the mother. When the mother sees the shoe of the child, she sees the child. She's not seeing just a shoe. Why? Because number one, she understands the name, that this is the shoe of my child. It's not just a shoe, a random shoe, it's the shoe of my child. And the other item, the other essential item, is that she loves her child. So because she loves the child and understands the connection between the shoe and the child, when she sees the shoe, she doesn't just see a shoe, she sees her child. So this is the process. we understand philosophically everything has a connection with Krishna. Everything is Krishna's energy. Our bodies, every atom, every subatomic particle, every universe and galaxy out there, it's all Krishna's energy. And then by the process of devotional service, hearing and chanting and serving and everything we do, we develop love for Krishna. And then when we put that together, then we're not Nitya Baddhas anymore. Then we're Nitya Mukta, even as in this world. Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa vacha nikla shwapya vastasu jivan mukta suuchite. That even in this world, iha yasya harer dasya, if you're Krishna's servant, karmana manasa vacha, karmana, all of your work, manasa, all of your meditation, and vacha, all of your words are dedicated to Krishna. In Niklashwapya Vastasu, and you give up all other material conceptions, then Jivan Mukta Suuchite. Such a person is called Jivan Mukta, even in this life. So then this is how the Nitya Baddha becomes the Jivan Mukta or the Nitya Mukta. And then at some time in the future, when we advance enough and Krishna decides, then we can actually go back to the spiritual world and actually be one of those Vrijabhasi Nitya Muktas, perhaps. But that mentality, that practice, that life is available even here, even now. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mother.
So I had this very simple vision in my mind. I just want to see what your thoughts are on. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's just so I was picturing these, like, to make it super simple. Obviously, it's not so simple, but two like eternal lines. One is, the material platform. One is the spiritual platform. They're both eternal, and it's our consciousness that chooses which platform we're on. So, is that so far? Is that like?
Yeah.
Accurate? So then,
yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Wouldn't that mean that, like, eternal, like, the lines are going on at the same time? So it's not that we're not, like, that we never don't have any existence in either place. It's that our consciousness, wherever our consciousness is like where we are. But like maybe it's unmanifested at the moment or something, like that would be maybe have time. Like we don't like blink out of the material world. We don't like, or we don't blink out like we're not there in the spiritual world. Simultaneously, it's like we can be, but what is that? I don't know. It's like,
most of that is beyond me.
Okay.
There are devotees who are existing simultaneously
Right.
on both of those timelines, or who go from one to the other. Like if you've read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopa Kumar, he's in this timeline, and then he actually jumps, and he's in the spiritual world.
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of actually being like, because I can understand like a liberated soul in the material world, it's still liberated soul there, like spiritually on that platform. But so then, yeah, I don't know how to explain this. It's like, are we eternally conditioned still, like, and eternally liberated at the same time? We just choose which one we're in? I don't know,
but I generally think of it as a very gradual transition in most cases. So, even all of us here maybe are a mixture of that we have our history in the material world in which we're eternally conditioned and as far back as you go. But if we look in the future, Prabhupada said he hoped that even in this life, we'd be able to go back to Godhead. And we're already on that path, already transitioning. So in one sense, you could say we're in both or transitioning between the two. It's all beyond my experience. I'm not sure. The idea about, changing your consciousness, that you're in one consciousness and the other, Prabhupada is expressed like that you just, Simple thing, you change your mind that I'm serving matter, I'm serving Krishna. It's a simple, almost binary switch. So there's that. But in our lives, it's probably not flipping a switch. It's probably, a long haul of years or even lifetimes of transition. But the actual experience of it is, so far beyond me. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say.
I had a couple of thoughts. One is in this discussion about defining Vidya. So even in English, we sometimes use the word forever, meaning something that takes a long time. Or like if somebody has a certain job, has been working for the company, you've been working for that company forever. Right? Or if you're waiting to take a shower, someone's in the morning, someone's taking you out of the bathroom, you've been in there forever. Right? So it's like, it's the same thing. It's just like such a long time, forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also heard
a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've also heard discussions about the specific word nitya, like nityam bhagavata sevaya. That nitya, in one sense, it may mean that you start hearing Bhagavatam and you just never stop. You just go on hearing Bhagavatam. Another meaning of nitya is regularly, that every day you hear Bhagavatam. And it's not nitya because you're not doing it 24 hours, but it's nitya in the sense of, regularly, continually. So there's shades of meaning, especially in Sanskrit. There's all sorts of shades of meaning. That's why I thought it was interesting that Prabhupada used the expression that this is a technical term, nityabhada, because that means, he's giving it a specific twist or a specific idea. But the words have some flexibility.
And, I've heard it said that when we become nitya, we'll realize that we were never actually nitya.
I've heard things like that, and I've heard like Bhaktivinoda Thakur say that when you go back to the spiritual world, you won't even remember or have any conception of your material existence.
Yeah.
So I've heard things like that. And here's an example. Who's the king that went to visit Lord Brahma and he came back and a zillion years had passed while he was away for a moment?
Oh, it was a king who wanted to marry his daughter.
Yes, he gave his daughter to Balaram, but the name is escaping me. So if even in this material world, there's such a disparity of time flow that a million years here, as you go up and even within the material universe, becomes just a moment. So imagine you go higher conceptually to the spiritual world. So what happens there? How if a million years is a moment for Lord Brahma, our eternal conditioning, how long is that in the spiritual world?
Who writes this article about the triangle and then it goes into an inverted triangle.
That's where I know that article, and that's actually where I got that idea from. What happens on the other side, I can't say, but we can analogize a little bit about what's happening in the material world. That even in the material world, as you're advanced, a long span of time becomes less and less significant. So we can imagine from the spiritual point of view, an eternity of conditionings like nothing. So it's not that it's not real, but it's meaningless. It becomes meaningless on that other side.
And then I was also appreciating what you were saying about the names. That if we use names that enable us to at least like mentally, even emotionally connect something with Krishna, and then we also have love for Krishna, that the thing will invoke our remembrance and love for Krishna more. I was just thinking of like examples of how we have that within this month. We don't say food, Krishna Prasada.
Yeah.
We don't say money, we say Lakshmi. We don't say that someone is dying.
Do people still say that, Lakshmi?
I don't think so about that.
You're book distributor, so maybe you do. But I haven't heard that one in a long time.
You didn't say the word money. And then like we don't say dying, we say that they keep their body. So we have all these things that just remind us of philosophical truths and connection to Krishna. It's a very nice way of seeing the world. And I know that there are other languages in the world that words are more you know, words that they have for the same things that we have in English are more spiritual.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, we've become a little accustomed to it and we don't think about it, but the point is there. And if we listen to the words and understand the words, yeah, there's a lot in there.
I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam, like I just started with a little bit ago, so I'm on the second canto. And I just read that purport the other day, is the last purport that I read.
About the world of names. Yeah, ninth chapter. Yeah.
I really like in that purport it says it's no more there's no more meaning to it than the battle of seaways. And because I was actually thinking about this like a little while ago, like some months ago, I was just driving in the car and I was seeing like there's all these like labels like a camera, like Kodak. What does that mean? They have no meaning. Like spiritual things, like at least it has the meaning because it's in connection with Krishna, but when it's not, it's literally just like sounds. It's just a combination. It's like the battle of seaways. It's not in connection with Krishna because it's so temporary. Yeah. What is Kodak? Like it's like all these different labels. Just brands. In India, you know, the brands are like Lakshmi, the brands are like, you know, Radha Krishna, whatever. And even hair, like everything is just spiritualized now. Like, but in America, it's like, I don't know, there's just so many random like letters put together.
Right. It reminds me, I don't know if this is even related, but it just reminded me of a funny story. Prabhupada was giving a college at a program at a college, and they had set up a table with a metal stand on it and the devotees were supposed to bring in a big painting of Panchatattva to put on the stand, but they had forgotten it. So the table was sitting there with this metal, what's the word, easel or stand on it. And someone in the audience after the class, there was questions and asked Prabhupada, what's the meaning of that device on the table there? And Prabhupada looked at him and said, I don't know, this is one of your technological symbols. So.
I feel like whenever I heard this purport, it almost was like a little bit like, I'm in trouble. Like if my position is Nitya, and then I'm supposed to forget Krishna and look at it. I have forgotten Krishna and I don't know sure why. Just yesterday we were reading like we're not like our mind, but we identify so much, it gives us so much trouble. And so I was just thinking, if that's our position right now, and you said that our position can change to Nitya. Everybody in the spiritual world is Nitya, or just sometimes they go back and just still Nitya.
I'm not sure. Are you asking if someone can return to the spiritual world and then fall again?
I guess so. If we're Nitya Bhakta right now, if you don't change the Nitya, you can still go back to the spiritual world.
Yes.
So if you go, and if you are,
otherwise, if not, we'd be wasting. What are we doing? Wasting our time.
And Prabhupada said that when we get to the spiritual world, we don't go back.
The Bhagavad Gita says, and Prabhupada said that once we return, we don't fall down again. There is I don't have it at my fingertips. I could look for it later today, but there is a conversation where a devotee says, but what if someone goes back to Godhead and wants to leave again? But said, but we never fall down. And I don't remember the exact words, but Prabhupada made a comment that you have your free will, what could be done, but generally you go back to Godhead and you've made your mistake and it's your natural position, it's your constitutional position. Why would you leave it? Yeah. Well, back and forth is there for the liberated souls. Just like again, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar, he's apparently a conditioned soul and he goes through all sorts of things. He's a cowherd boy, he becomes a king, he becomes a Lord Brahma, he becomes a sage, he's doing so many things, and he goes back to the spiritual world. And then Krishna specifically requests him to come back to the material world to preach and deliver a particular person. And actually, there's a commentary by Sanatan Goswami, which I heard from His Grace Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, who translated Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that sometimes Krishna will take someone just becoming perfect in the spiritual world. Although once again, you know, in a place where time has no effect, what does it mean that something just happened? But we'll take that person and send him back to preach because they can relate. Because they just came from the material world, so they could go back and preach very effectively. They're liberated, and now they're eternally liberated, but they have some understanding of the life of the conditioned soul and can go preach like that. So that's a unique situation. But yeah, the pure devotees, that also says, Gopa Kumar says, yes, sometimes I'm in Goloka Vrindavan, and sometimes I'm in this world. I see no difference.
Cases like that, it's like time you have your base and you go.
Yeah.
So you're always in the spiritual world. Sometimes you go preach somewhere to a planet and you're not in charge.
Yeah, because it's all Krishna's kingdom, it's all Krishna's creation. We name it the material world and we use it for our sense gratification, and therefore it's the material world. But what's that? Prabodhananda Saraswati says, not Sisyphus, what's that? Vishwam, yeah, thank you. Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. That he sees the material world as full of happiness. And he sees the big demigods in heaven to be just like insignificant insects. And the temptation of the senses, it's just like snakes that have had their fangs removed. So even in the material world, he's eternally liberated. And he sees the material world like the spiritual world. Even though we make a distinction, material world and spiritual world, but in another sense, there's no distinction. Let me just see if anyone it's late, but we can see online. I have them muted. Hare Krishna, anyone out there in television land have a question?
Prabhu, wonderful class.
Hare Krishna, if anybody is having any comment, question, please go ahead.
Wonderful class, Prabhu. Thank you very much. And a lot of devotees, they were asking questions that was very good. And one, you said that once we go to spiritual way, and then we won't remember anything from material. We don't want to
Bhakti Vinod Thakur said that.
Material. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Once we go to spiritual way, then we don't want to remember anything in material.
Right. What's to remember? Oh, I used to be.
This Dukharem, what
I used to be.
what to remember?
I used to work you're enjoying bliss with Krishna, and you're thinking, oh, I used to work in the factory.
Yeah.
I used to
What
do this
else
or
we
that.
want? What else we want? We don't want anything.
Even here now as
Dukharem.
devotees, we sometimes we don't want to remember our previous life to being devotees when we were doing whatever nonsense things we were doing.
True. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nice class.
Anything else?
Always it will be very nice class.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Hare Krishna, going forward. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Vancha kalpatarabhyasya kripa sindhobhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Once again, Hare Krishna.